Happy Monday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Gold. I'm joined today by Michael Facci. Facci, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing great. Had a nice weekend. Celebrated Father's Day with my father, my brother, and it was a good time. A couple other members of the family, of course, but always nice to have a couple of us gathered together. And I'm back. I'm ready to talk some Pacer basketball today.
Yeah, we got a fun exercise to do today, but we do have an announcement to make before we get to today's exercise on the show, and that is Wednesday this week. Pacers guard Andrew Nembhard interview setting the pace. You guys are not going to want to miss that. So, going to be a lot of fun as we talk with the guy that broke out this postseason, had a big game winner against the New York Knicks, and also got called a star by Mike Breen. Andrew Nembhard making another appearance on setting the pace before he joins Team Canada and has a fun, busy off season as well. So, with that being said, Facci, go ahead and let everybody know what we're doing today.
So, we love a good draft. And while the Pacers might not have a first round pick this year, we're going to draft the top five games of this past season for the Indiana Pacers. A trip down memory lane, a lot of great memories and performances by the Pacers, but we're going to be drafting our top five.
Yeah, that we always love doing drafts. It's been a hot minute since we've done a draft. And so I thought, what better way than to do a draft of the games of the year so we can kind of reflect and look at the season and what really stood out to us, what games really left a lasting imprint on our minds. But Facci, I'm going to give you the honors. Do you want the first pick or do you want the second and third pick?
Oh, man. Uh, uh, Give me the second and third pick, actually. I'm going
Give you
value.
this, give you the second and third pick and put all the pressure on me for the first pick.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think I have to do number one as probably the most lasting memory that I'm going to have from this season, and that is Game 7 in the Garden against the New York Knicks. Pacers win 130-109, and they shoot a playoff record 67.1% from the field.
I mean, look, you can't go wrong with that. I think the Pacers played a simply perfect game. And that's how I would describe it. You're never going to shoot 100% in NBA or anything. That's impossible.
Yeah.
67.1%. That was the best in a game 7 of all time. So, no knock on that one. I did have
You
a
got the
look.
theatrics though. You got the theatrics with
That's what
Tyrese talking to the fan. The Knicks slowly start to come back in the third quarter. It gets crazy. Aaron Nesmith goes 8 for 8 from the field. A perfect 100%. Tyrese Halliburton walks into the post game press conference with the Reggie Miller sweatshirt on. They got everybody upset. Still posting
did.
pictures of it. Pascal was dominant. You got OG coming out of the grave to play for this game and look terrible movement wise. I mean, and then it just was so great to see that fan and Tyrese going back and forth, especially in the first half. I loved it. I mean, that was such an epic moment, Fudge.
It really was, and it's what completed the comeback for the Pacers, who trailed 2 games to nothing early on in this series. So I felt like it was a series that it felt like it was Indiana against the world. It really did. Between the 16 ESPN media members that picked the Knicks to win, and it's just like all the hate that Halliburton was getting. I mean, 26 points on the road in Game 7 really came through. The starters were phenomenal. It just felt like that was the performance that you always wondered, can we win that big game? And I think the Pacers really showed a lot when they
Mhm.
won that game. So great choice at number one for you for your top pick.
Yeah,
My top pick, I'm going Tyrese Halliburton's game winner in overtime against the Bucks.
yeah,
Game 3, his playoff home debut, or a ruckus crowd in Indiana. I mean, they were just going wild. We had to withstand 2 insanely clutch Chris Middleton jumpers. This man just wouldn't stop, one of which forced overtime. And I felt like it was just going to, at that point, I didn't have much faith in the Pacers at that point from being able to make this comeback. I was like, Middleton just won't quit. But I felt like you also got to paint the big picture. Before that Halliburton game winner, you had Andrew Nembhard just battling on the glass, grabbing offensive rebound after offensive rebound, giving the Pacers these second chance opportunities. And then it came down to Tyrese Halliburton with the and one floater on Patrick Beverly, hits the and one. The crowd goes wild. I mean, it's like there was no one better to hit that shot on than Pat Bev. And I felt like you were in the building, and it just felt like that was like laying down the bricks of building Tyrese's, legacy of like this man is the real deal. He's in the playoffs now, and look what he just did.
Yeah, it was an awesome game, and you got to remember Miles Turner had 29 points in that game as well. I mean, Miles hit some big clutch threes for the Pacers in that game, but it was Tyrese's game. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well, just 1 of 12 from three in that game. I do remember when he hit that big three, it was in the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. That was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
But the 16 assists were huge, the 18 points. Aaron Nesmith hits that three in the corner after missing almost every single shot that game. I think he ended up going 1 of 7. So that one three that he hit was right there, kind of like reminiscent of Travis Best's corner three that he hit for the Eastern Conference
Sure.
Finals first round game against in game 5 against the Bucks as well to clinch that one. So a lot of great memories in that game. That game was crazy. It put you, in cardiac arrest. And I thought it was awesome that Mark Jones, the former Sacramento Kings play-by-play announcer, was on the call for ESPN to call Tyrese Halliburton's first postseason playoff game at home, like you mentioned. So, and he had the epic line, "Tyrese the Terror." It was so sick. It was a special moment, and I can't argue that was in my top three. Foch. I mean, this is definitely a great pick.
Oh yeah. I mean that's a moment. I just refuse to believe that anyone's gonna forget that moment anytime
Yeah,
soon if you're a Pacer fan. But my number two pick, it's another game three. It's Andrew
yeah.
Nembhard's game-winning three against the Knicks. You're facing potentially trailing 3 games to nothing, something that no one has ever come back from in the NBA. And Andrew Nembhard chucks up a prayer. Tyrese gave it to him at the end of the shot clock like it was a grenade. Just, hey man, just do something with it. Tyrese had no shot, nothing to do, and Nembhard, who had missed a lot of threes before that. I mean, that's something that's easy to be forgotten about is that he had put up 2 or 3 3-pointers just before that missed, and this was a near, I think it was like a near 40-foot 3-pointer, something of the sort. It was deep. It was deep in the 30s. Hits it in Brunson's face, and I just felt like that shot was just. I mean, there was another game that you were at. I mean, the crowd was going nuts, and you also got to remember in that game, Tyrese Halliburton had 35 points.
Yeah, he was
Siakam had
awesome.
26. The Pacers did everything they could to kind of fight off, what was not getting any calls in the previous 2 games and blowing some leads in games 1 and game 2. Like they really responded when you needed them most, even if it took a prayer.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there, Foch. I think that when you look at this one right here, it was an epic moment because of what the bench was not able to do. The bench could not really get it going for Indiana after they had been dominant on the road in games 1 and game 2. You really thought, okay, the bench is going to come in, they're going to be at home, they're going to help the Pacers lift them to a victory, and they really struggled. I mean, your bench combined for 14 points. And Obi Toppin had just 2 points. McConnell went 3 of 10 from the field for 6 points. Shepard only had 2 points. It was Halliburton who really took it to him. And I know DiVincenzo was on fire that game, but couldn't hit anything in the fourth quarter. It was the Jalen Brunson show. Jalen Brunson was really struggling early on. He changed his shoes at halftime. I'll never forget. Changed
Mm-hmm.
his shoes, came out, started hitting everything. But then when he tried to flop to get the foul call, when after Nembhard hit that big three, yeah, that's when everybody was kinda like, "What are you doing? Like, just try to shoot the ball. Like, nobody even touched you." He was, like, begging for a foul, and I think the last 2-minute report even said it was the correct no call. But it was a big testament of, like, your big 3 step up. Halliburton 35, Siakam 26, like you said, Turner 21 and 10, and really rebounded the basketball pretty well there. So, Nembhard, I don't know why in the world it always happened this way, but it felt like it all season long. When the game was on the line, the ball found its hands, and it found Andrew
Yep.
Nembhard in the hands. And a lot of times he's hitting these shots that you don't think he's going to make, or he's taking these shots and he's missing them, missing them, missing them. You're like, dude, quit shooting the basketball. You're not the guy to close the game out. But Tyrese puts him in a tough predicament. He loses the ball as he's shooting it, kind of gathers it back quickly, and doesn't even have a chance to think about what's happening. He has to shoot it as the shot clock is expiring. And we get the epic Mike Breen call. I mean, still gives me chills every time I hear Mike Breen say bang on that highlight. It is just, oh man, it brings you back, Fudge.
It really does. I mean, that was just those are the moments that like, yeah, we all went through a bunch of heartbreak this year. Like DeMar DeRozan with some miracle, game winning through, play, all that stuff like that. But it's just like when Andrew Nembhard comes through in that moment, you just look and you go, I love this team. I
Mhm.
love them through the highs and the lows. Like that feeling of just even though they still trailed 2 games to one, it gave me so much hope to be like the next one's in Indiana. All of a sudden, like we can do this. Like we can get back in this series. And that shot really broke the hearts of a lot of Knicks fans because without that shot, I mean, Indiana goes down 3 games to nothing. They would lose that series. They really would. That shot saved the Pacers season.
No, it definitely did, Facci. Well, we can move on now. I'm going to have back-to-back picks here now for myself, and I would
Yeah.
say all of the star-studded ones in the playoffs are probably out the door now for the Pacers' victories, at least anyway. I mean, there were some other games they won, but I don't know if they were like as significant as this. So I'm going to go to the regular season now for our first regular season game. I think the most important and the biggest regular season game of the year was in Indianapolis in the semifinals or the quarterfinals, I should say, before the Pacers made it to the in-season tournament in Vegas. The 122-112 victory over the Boston Celtics on the blue court. That game was drunk. The Pacers were down, I think, at half. I can't remember now at the top of my head, but they were down at half. They came back out, really made it a game. Tyrese Halliburton had that huge 4-point play. Aaron Nesmith had the steal and the dunk. Buddy Hield hit a big three out of a timeout, and the Pacers pulled away late against Boston and made it to the in-season tournament. Final four, and I don't think anybody expected that. Everybody was thinking Boston's got this in the bag. It won't be that big of a deal, but Indiana stuns Boston, and you could see it on the Boston Celtics face. Like they were just like, "What just happened?" So I think Porzingis actually went out in that game, got hurt in the middle of that game too. So I would just say Halliburton had 26 points, 13 assists, 10 rebounds in 40 minutes. Turner had 17 and 10. Buddy Hield had 21 points on 4 of 6 shooting from three. Bruce Brown, Obi Toppin, they played pretty significant roles, but Ben Matherin off the bench had 16 points and Aaron Nesmith off the bench had 14 points. So it was a really fun game to watch, and I loved being in that arena for the first time in a long time to see significant basketball being played.
That was awesome. I mean, just to be able to beat Boston at that time just really felt like I think you also kind of got to rewind a little bit because it's like the Pacers won that game. Well, if you rewound, I don't know, however many weeks, maybe a month before, Indiana lost by 51
Yeah.
to Boston. So I felt like it was like, how are you going to play Boston this time around? And the Pacers really responded. It was a huge win. And I feel like it was just one of those when Indiana was really stacking up those wins and starting to gain, that momentum around the league to be like, whoa, did you see what the Pacers just did? And I felt
Mhm.
like that was one of those performances that kind of started to give Indiana that shine and kind of put them on the map a little bit. So definitely one of those performances that I remember that post game pod being electric after
Mhm.
that. Those were the times where it was really fun to record after a game compared to, maybe a loss that Indiana should have won. That night, it was all good vibes.
And we're gonna stay with the good vibes in the end season tournament because we've got the Tyrese Halliburton. It's my time now against the Milwaukee Bucks. Indiana wins 128-119. One of 8 victories against the Milwaukee Bucks this year. Facci, just a reminder there, if any Bucks fans are listening, that was one of 8 victories the Pacers had over the Bucks this year. It was when Tyrese Halliburton once again goes off, puts himself on the map in the in-season tournament run to get to the championship game against the Lakers. He had 27 points, 15 assists and 7 rebounds in 37 minutes, had 11 of 19 from the field, and absolutely obliterated Brook Lopez, who was in drop coverage for the majority of that game. Miles Turner was unbelievable in this one as well. They had took advantage of, once again, that terrible pick and roll coverage by Milwaukee. He had 26 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists. He was 9 of 18 from the field. And then the bench, they all played well together. Isaiah Jackson had 11 points off the bench. DJ McConnell, Ben Matherin both had 9. Andrew Nembhard had 8. Aaron Nesmith had 6. I mean, it's crazy to think about this, but you had Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith coming off the bench with Matherin at this point because Hield, Brown, and Toppin were all starting, and those 3 didn't play significantly great, but Toppin was 14 points on 6 of 8 shooting. I think everybody remembers that iconic pass that Halliburton had over the top to Obi Toppin wide open in the corner when he cut down the when excuse me, Halliburton was driving down the lane, threw the ball to the corner to top, and they're like, how did he even get that pass there? It was just one of those things. Indiana just they were up big. The Bucks came back when Dame started finally hitting shots in the third quarter, but Indiana shut them down. And I think that was like the fewest amount of points Giannis scored against the Pacers too this season. I mean, like 30 something, but like it was just significantly less than what he had done previously.
Far less. Yeah, I think that was definitely the wins against Milwaukee. I just feel like those were just incredible stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, I definitely think that was a great performance. And anytime I remember I don't remember if that was Giannis coming off of the 64-point game. Was
It was
that
after that, yeah, because he had the
yeah,
64-point game. No, it was before that. He had the 64-point game after the in-season tournament in Milwaukee, but before that, he had 54 points
exactly.
in Indianapolis in November, and that's when Matherin had the steal and the block on him in the
Well,
closing moments.
before you go any further, that is my next pick.
Okay, okay.
That was a moment.
Yeah.
I just remember it was just like, 126, 124. Giannis, you mentioned 54 points. It was just like it was going back and forth, back and forth. And this is at a point in the season where like you're still wondering, like, to be able to beat the Bucks is like some really tall task. I mean, this game, a lot of people forget this is a very early in the season game. I mean, this was I think like the ninth game of the year. So the idea of beating the Bucks was a little bit like, I don't know if we're ready for that. But the moment that will always stand out to me is Matherin getting that stripped steal on
Yeah.
Giannis. I just felt like, yeah, Matherin, who's never known for his defense, coming up with such a big steal at that point sealed the game. And it just felt like that was something that you could really say, hey, Indiana doesn't get many stops, but when they do, it just might be a timely stop.
Mhm.
And Matherin didn't just have that steal. He was still in the starting lineup at that point in the season. He had 26 points and 11 rebounds in that game. It was one of the best performances of his career, especially from a rebounding standpoint. I believe at that point, the 11 rebounds were a career high. So I just felt like that was a moment. That was another one where I remember, just how crazy it was to record right after that game and just how like rabid the fan base was for such a win, especially early on in the season. That was something that really gave us confidence to say, like, hey, I think we can hang with some of the better teams in the league.
That was a super fun game, and I was actually able to be there live, and I was sitting courtside with my father-in-law, my 2 brother-in-laws, and so being able to see Giannis up close like that moving, in full speed was just incredible. Indiana had no answer for him, but it was great to see. I think that was the moment where Tyrese also froze Malik Beasley and just drove right by him, and that became a meme, and so that was really great. But Matherin had some big moments. He was talking trash, Malik Beasley up close. Buddy Hield was playing pretty good in that game as well. So it was just one of those games where Daniel Tice, the only game he played too. How iconic is that Facci picks the only game Daniel Tice got into this season for the
Love
Pacers?
me some Tice. I just remember him coming in. We had no answer for Giannis. I think he took that hard elbow right to the chest or whatever it was, and I think he was out of there a little while after that. But yeah. Hey, Daniel Tice making an appearance on this episode. Who would have thought Tice would make an appearance when we're talking about the best moments of the season?
Yeah, we're bringing out all the names. Bruce Brown, Daniel Tice, Buddy Hield, all the former Pacers coming out. It's a coming out party for former Pacers against the Bucks. But yeah, no, it was fun. Obi Toppin really struggled in that game, got in foul trouble. Same with Neesmith. They both ended up getting, I think, nine fouls in like 29 minutes of play. So like combined, that's just very tough to guard Giannis and put Matherin in a spot where he had to really step up and kind of take ownership of that. I thought that Indiana did a really good job of sending double teams at times late in the game, and Middleton was still on a minutes restriction and things like that. Dame did not play in this game either, so that is another thing about this game that I remember, but I'll never forget how fun it was to watch at because it was like, okay, Indiana might be onto something here. They might be a little bit better than we think they are.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I just think that those are some of those moments that you look back that were kind of like those early season defining things to say, like, this Pacers team, they're a little bit different than last year. Like, I don't think this is going to be a team that's going to be kind of like hovering around 500. Like, I think we might actually have something here. course, the Pacers were really struggling to get stops. The defense was atrocious early on in the season, but you saw enough flashes to say there's something different about this team.
Yeah, and definitely you can go back and look at this game and say, how many minutes did TJ McConnell play? He was a DNP coach's decision.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's where they were at this point. Andrew Nembhard was the backup point guard. He had 10 points on 4 or 5 shooting. 20 minutes played. I thought Nembhard had a good game for being the backup point guard. But man, it's just kind of crazy how much things change in one season, Facci.
A lot.
And it was a lot of fun when that happened, but you kind of forget about it until you start talking about it again once you get excited about all the playoff stuff. So anyway, you got one more pick now. So I'm curious which game you're going to next.
I do. I'm going with another opponent that we've already mentioned. It's the Boston Celtics. And this time it was the Pacers beating Boston 133 to 131. It was a game where the starters simply did not have it, and the bench carried the Pacers. Benedict Mathurin off the bench, 26 points and the game-winning free throws. Porzingis fouled him on that three-pointer, which some argue isn't a foul. Or I think it was he got fouled, and the Pacers ended up getting lucky with that they didn't foul the Celtics. It was like
There's
some
Jalen Brown in the corner. Remember they said it was a clean
that's what
block.
it was. Yep. Didn't get the call. Ironic. How ironic is that? Jalen Brown doesn't get the call over there, or whatever, but then he makes the three in the corner when it mattered most in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's very unfortunate because the Pacers did overcome 40 points from Jalen Brown in that game. But the bench, like I mentioned, they were magnificent. 75 points against Boston. The second win on the season against the Boston Celtics. And it was one that made us feel that we could truly hang with the league's elite.
No, it was a super fun game, but you're missing the biggest storyline here. This is where Tyrese Halliburton hurt his hamstring.
Yeah, that's true. That was definitely unfortunate. Seeing him do like that kind of like split as he went down the ground, I just knew it was like, this isn't good. This is not good. But Indiana did enough to be able to get the job done.
Yeah, and I think what makes it interesting and makes it more special is the fact that Tyrese was playing pretty well in this game before he went down with the injury. Already had 6 assists in 13 minutes, had 7 points. He was playing pretty good basketball. Wasn't shooting a lot, only had 5 shots at this point, was 3 or 5 from the field, but goes down pretty bad. They go to Nembhard, they go to McConnell, like you said, and those two guys stepped up. But Mathurin had another breakout game and really kind of carried the Pacers. It was Bruce Brown didn't shoot the ball particularly well, and with Halliburton being out, you needed someone to kind of pick up the scoring. And once again, here comes Ben Mathurin to the rescue off the bench, putting up some big points off the bench. So, yeah, this was a really fun game. Obviously, there was a lot of those I felt like with Boston for the majority of the season, besides the 50-point blowout early on. So, even in the playoffs, every game was really competitive with them. So I don't know if it's just a matchup thing or if it's maybe Indiana's better or more talented than maybe we're giving them credit for. But wow, I mean, it was just a lot of fun.
Well, real quick on that topic, I mean, in present day, they're already saying that Indiana might have been a tougher team than the Dallas Mavericks are right now in terms of for Boston. So it's just
Ugh.
interesting when you look at things to say, like, was Indiana the second best team out of these conference finals? I don't know. It's very possible.
Yeah, we are recording this on June 10th, and this is airing on June 17th. So the finals could be over by that point, Fudge. We don't even know.
They could, but in this present moment right now, the Pacers are getting a little bit of shine by the media, and it's nice to see that because they actually did play Boston very well in that series, despite it obviously being a sweep. So, so far I think the Mavericks have had their fair share of troubles, but just wanted to
Yeah.
throw that in.
All right. Well, let's keep it moving here now with my next pick of games. And we're going back to a game where Tyrese Halliburton did not play. And this was the game we talked about on our previous episode where Obi Toppin had the game winning layup. The Indiana Pacers take down the Phoenix Suns 133-131, where Devin Booker had 60 points. And the Pacers said, you know what? That's nice, D Book. Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, we're not worried about you. Pacers go small. Miles Turner only plays 18 minutes in this game. Andrew Nembhard, Facci, playing the point guard role. He really had some nice moments here and kind of found his groove when Tyrese went out. 22 points, 8 assists, had some clutch mid-range shots. Pascal Siakam was hitting big bucket after big bucket, 31 points for him. 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Obi Toppin, 23 and 11 off the bench. It was just so many guys stepped up. Aaron Nesmith, he also was great in this game. 22 points on 8 of 13 shooting, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. This is a game that you don't think about, but if you go back and watch, you'll say, Oh my god, this game was amazing. You were out of town, I think. I
I
don't remember
was.
where you were at. Chris Teneri was so hyped about this game. I texted him and said, "We got to talk about this game on the pod. Are you free?" And he was like, "You know what?" He was like, "Let's do it." So he came on the podcast with you. I'm trying to remember when that game was. I think it was in the beginning of February.
I want to say it was March. It might have been
Was it?
March. I could be wrong. So
I'm
I'm
gonna look it
looking
up real
at it.
quick, but keep talking.
Yeah. So I remember I was away. Okay. Uh, I don't remember where. I think I might have been in Florida or something like that. I was just a little bit bitter that I remember I missed that game because I was traveling and it ended up being such a good game. And it's like I've talked about it earlier, in the episode. That's like those are the games that you absolutely want to do a post game pod for when
Hmm.
you have those type of moments. And so it was January 26th. It was
Yeah.
I don't know what I was doing, but I was not in town. And to miss that game, it had a little bit of everything. That would have been my next pick for sure.
Okay, so I'm glad we're on the same page because that is the game I loved the most. And I remember I didn't even watch the whole game in full before I recorded the podcast because I was out doing something that night with friends, I think. I got home and I was like watching the end of it. I was like, I've got to see what happens here. So now, Facci, I'm on to my last pick, and I've got two choices to pick from. But because of the iconic thing that happened after this game, I'm picking the Pacers defeat the Atlanta Hawks
Oh my
157.
God, that was my next pick. All right, go on. Sorry,
I'm just taking up for Faji here.
that was
Pacers
tough.
beat the Hawks 157-152. Buddy Hill, 9 of 11 from the field, 6 of 6 from three, 24 points. Tyrese Halliburton, 9 of 15 from three, 11 from 18 from the field, 16 assists, 5 rebounds, 37 points. Turner had 11. Neesmith had 17. Bruce Brown had 13. Matherin, 7 of 10 off the bench, 19 points. Obi Toppin, 9 of 16 off the bench for 21 points. And not only did we get a Pacers victory in the in season tournament group play once again, but we got the Quinn Buckner locker room moment with his little satchel on and he's dropping silverware on the floor. They're saying, "Go, Quinn. Go, Quinn. Go. Go, Quinn. Go, Quinn, go." And you have Buddy in there with Tyrese, and they're posting on social, and everyone's asking Quinn about it in the media room. And Quinn's like, "Don't want to talk about it. Don't know what you're talking about." But it was an iconic moment for that. We got the best meme of the season with Quinn Buckner. So I'm going to go my final pick Pacers Hawks.
Look, anytime you played the Hawks, I think it was a delight. I mean, it was like I said, it was franchise best night. Anytime you played them, they were breaking records. So I think now that I've lost, you took my last two games. I think I'm just going to pivot back to playing the Hawks last game of the season.
Can I give you one to throw out as
What do you got?
as an opportunity to switch it?
What do you got?
I know that we talked about the in-season tournament a lot, but what about that game on the road against Philadelphia when Tyrese Halliburton had 33 points, 15 assists, 7 rebounds, and 0 turnovers as they won 132-126? And Turner comes back in the fourth quarter and has a huge fourth quarter. Obi Toppin 27 points on 12 of 15 shooting. That was the two games I was torn between. I think it's
Yeah, I
better than
mean
the Hawks game.
that's definitely a really good game as well. I think that was definitely one that probably meant more during the regular season.
Yes.
I think that was like a big win. Like this game against the Hawks, the last game of the season, is like it was such a disastrous Hawks team out there, but like I just felt like it symbolized like we're back. We're back in the playoffs. Like, 157, you got to remember is also like we did that twice against the Hawks, nearly a franchise best. Then next, when you win this game, it was if the Pacers lost that game, they were going to tumble down to the play-in. It was going to get ugly. I felt like this game you had to have, and the Pacers dropped 49 points in that first quarter.
Hmm.
Really set the tone. I felt like they shot 65% in that game. They had 41 assists. It was like they did everything right except for breaking the franchise scoring record. I remember, poor Jarris Walker, he's holding the ball at the end of the game. Like, it's like he wants to shoot, but he's got to keep it classy. And I just felt like, that was the only thing that we didn't get that night. It was a new franchise scoring best. But overall, I felt like Siakam put the team on his back. Turner, 31 points. Turner was incredible in that game. 31
Hmm.
points on 13 of 17 shooting. He only played 22 minutes.
Yeah.
So Miles would have been on for a career game. And just to me, it symbolized the end of, I know it was only really like 2 seasons, but it was like 2 dark seasons of like, oh God, all right, like we're back where we should be in the playoffs. And for that, after you took my other picks, I'm going to have to pivot to the last game of the regular season.
Yeah, and I mean they clinch a playoff spot. They avoid the play-in tournament too. Like that's a big thing that they did. There's a lot of big games, so it's kind of hard to sit here and say, well, this one should have made over that. Like I was really torn between that 76ers game just because Maxey was so good. I think he had 50 points a game prior to that. The Pacers had that, back-to-back game there against Philadelphia with a day in between, and it just was such a fun game. I just remember Obi Toppin playing so well in that game and really being the difference maker for Indiana with the 27 points that he had, and Tyrese was just playing at MVP level tie. Like I think it was so fun to go back and watch that. So it'll be interesting to see if Tyrese can get back there. But are there any other games you had on your list that you want to throw out that I didn't mention yet?
It's tough. The fact that we had 10 games that we were able to look back and say these were awesome moments of the season is like we just didn't have that in previous games. I feel like all the in-season tournament games, except for the finals, were all like totally deserving of
Mhm.
being in there. Those games against Milwaukee, I just think that pretty much all of them, even the one that we lost, like I wasn't gonna put a loss in there, but like the game that we did lose, where there's Giannis with the career high and just that ball situation, that was a huge moment on the regular season. I mean, some could say Oscar Tshiebwe's first points, but others think about just like all everybody was talking about that, and I honestly felt like that game led to the Pacers re-signing James Johnson, and I just felt like the team clicked after that game. So I think that was an honorable mention, but that was the only game that would have came in the loss. And then I got one more for you. One
Okay.
more I would just say, Pacers facing elimination. Game 6. Was it game 6 against the
Yeah,
Knicks?
against the Knicks at home.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, they just
Yeah.
blew them out. They were up by like as much as 40 when the Knicks wore the funeral outfits or whatever you want to call it. They dressed in all black. They looked like clowns afterwards going home. Now they had to go to game 7 and the Pacers managed to, pull out that series. So those would be my two honorable mentions. What about
Ye-
yourself?
Yeah, I do have a couple more. I will just throw this one out there. Game 2 of the regular season, Indiana on the road against Cleveland,
That was a good
and
one.
Tyrese Halliburton hits 3 threes in a row and looks at the Cavaliers fan in the front row and says that this is your fault. You did this. And I think the Pacers held Cleveland to like 12 points or something crazy like that. Maybe even like 8. I can't remember. It was like a super low number in the second quarter. They just completely dominated them. And it was still so early on. Everything was so exciting. But like Turner had 20 points, Halliburton had 21. Aaron Nesmith had a huge game against the Cavs off the bench, 26 points, 9 rebounds. It's just kind of in Aaron Nesmith fashion because Obi Toppin was not playing great in this game early on. So that was a fun one for me. And then I think we got to go back to what happened. I believe it was against Chicago and then followed up against New York. Tyrese Halliburton has back to back 20 assist games and 0
Oh,
turnovers.
yeah, that was crazy. That was a
That was
wild
special.
run for Halliburton. That was when he was just like he just didn't commit a turnover for just like the stretch, however many quarters it was. It was crazy. It was like 10 or 12 quarters or something of the sort. And his assist total, it might have ran, it was getting close to 50 assists before he finally had a
Mhm.
turnover. And I mean that type of play right there, there's no one in the league that's capable of that.
Right. So it's a lot of fun to kind of go back and reminisce and think about the good old games. And if there's any games that you guys like that we missed, let us know. Maybe later on in July we'll do a greatest plays of the season draft. Maybe we can do something like that. Maybe we'll do regular season versus playoffs because I definitely know there's some great moments in the playoffs we could draft just by themselves. So maybe we'll do regular season versus playoffs. But Facci, that was a lot of fun. I think it gave us a good chance to kind of recap this season, put a bow on it, and continue to look forward to our draft coverage. Like I said, Andrew Nembhard, if nothing else, if everything goes right, I can't talk right now. It's late. If everything goes right, Andrew Nembhard, Wednesday morning podcast, excuse me. It'll drop Wednesday morning for you all. And then we'll be talking trades on Friday. So we're looking at either Pacers most likely to be traded, or we're going to be looking at top 10 trade ideas. So one of those two will be coming at you. But with that being said, Foch, go ahead and let everybody know where they can find us out on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter at PacersPod, STP. You can find Alex on Twitter at Alex Golden NBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at PacersPodSTP. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to youtube.com/setting the pace, a Pacers podcast. Subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you think in the comments section below because we want to hear from you. But if you guys are excited about listening to us on the audio platform, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, please subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review, follow the show. Let everybody know that you love this Pacers podcast as we continue our off-season content. But with that being said, Facci, if you're excited that the NBA draft is not too far away and the Pacers offseason is about to kick off, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.